Hello, welcome to Inspire in Half an Hour podcast. My name is Ruth Aisi, and my guest today is Emeka Ntone Edjabe. Emeka is based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I chat to Emeka about his passion for art, but also for mathematics. He talks to me about how he shares his skills with young people and his plans for the future. But first of all, I chat to Emeka about how he got into art in the first place.
I think from a very young age, I was always drawing and scribbling things. Even back in Maputo, when I was at Instituto Nilia, I was making drawings and writing little comments on them, or asking people to write little comments and stories on them. And then I just continued, never in a very focused way. And I don't think ever really knowing what I was doing when I was drawing, but it just felt like something that always came very naturally to me. So I continued to do it. And then I guess in high school, I took it as a subject because it just
Okay.
made sense.
Yes.
And I would continue to do it from there. But at that time, I hadn't decided that it's something that I really wanted to try achieve at.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and I remember at at the end of my high school years in matric, I was taking physics and visual arts at the same time, which not
An,
a lot of people do.
an unusual combination, yes.
And I remember I ended up taking a gap year as soon as I came out of high school because I wasn't sure if I was going to go into science or if I was going to go into visual arts.
Mm.
And I ended up starting my university career in the mathematics field.
Wow.
But after a year, it really dawned on me that I needed to have a very like visual arts focused
Yes.
university experience. So I think maybe that's the moment or the clearest moment that I can think of where I decided to choose visual
Mm.
arts as something I was going to focus on for quite a while.
What put you off the maths? Sort of like a hatred of maths and a love of art, or how did it work?
I don't think it was a hatred of maths.
Mm.
I still have maths holds a special place and I appreciate it. Also, considering the workload, there isn't really much space for anything else outside of that when you're studying like a scientific degree.
Mm.
They're very strenuous on your time. And I realized that if I was going to continue, there would be no space for me to create at all,
Mm.
or at least
Mm.
not on the level that I wanted to now that I was finished at high school and
Oh,
was coming into my adulthood and
mm.
all of that. So I think that actually made me really depressed in the
Yes.
second semester of my first year. I kind of crashed.
Mm.
And instead of attending lectures, I was rummaging for materials and making
Mm.
drawings in my room and
Mm.
little paintings. And that was kind of the thing that I used to pass my time and keep myself together. So at the end of that, I just made the decision that what I really want is to go to art school for a couple of years and just push that side of myself and see where it
Mm.
goes.
It seems like art, you feel like you have to do it in order to keep your mental well-being as well. It's something that you actually have, you feel is very, it's a part of you. Is that right?
I think so, most definitely. Um, and I mean, it was really interesting to be in an art school and
Mm.
some parts which felt like contradicted my idea of arts and the art world.
Mm.
Um, but I think it was necessary for me to be in that space just to kind of find myself. I think particularly because, as you say, like art is a part of myself. It's
Mm.
very intrinsic to how I maintain and express myself. So I think there are a lot of lessons I learned going through that experience, which will make the rest of my life a lot more simple now that
Yeah.
I've done that work. Yeah.
And now you're actually working with a group of South African artists.
So
Is that
at
right?
this community center that has these great facilities, they haven't been activating the space. So I'm trying to start these workshops to get high school students, so between 14 and 18 years old, to enter the space, just to engage. And I mean, the focus is not, it's not looking at students who want to be artists or who want to study art in university. It's
Mm.
for anyone. And the intention is really to just have a conversation with yourself, with your thoughts, your ambitions, and I guess considering your future, your dreams and aspirations. And it's just that we're using visual arts as like the language to kind of express those things and unpack them. So in that sense, I've been working with people. There's some artists from my class. There's other students that I've met through like the education sector. I'm not even exactly looking to become a professional, like independent practicing artist. I think it's
No.
something that will stay with me, and I'll
Mm.
continue to make things in my own time and in my at
Yes.
my own pace. But I really want to go into school and deal with young people. But now the focus, I mean, I have to write proposals to
Just,
put posters up in schools, and I have to work out a marketing strategy to get,
yeah.
I guess, kids involved, because there isn't the greatest hype around visual arts, I don't think.
Why do
Yeah.
you think that is in schools? Because I always sort of associate Johannesburg with a city of art somehow. Yeah, I don't know if that is
I think it is
correct.
true, but I think as, okay, let me not say as young people, but I think there are very many understandings of what art can look like
Mm.
and what art can do for you, or at least what creativity can look like and what
Mm.
creativity can do. I think there are a lot of associations around creativity being very trendy
Mm.
and getting you a lot of popularity and visibility. But in more cases than not, it's actually a very solemn, I think, quite a solemn and introspective experience and a really introspective career. So I think the kind of workshop that I'm trying to have has a lot to do with that kind of reflection and introspection. So it loses a bit of the appeal of the hype and the party and the loud pop culture around, I think, what a lot of people consider to be artistic endeavors. So yeah, uh, I don't know. There is also, I think, an exclusive mindset when it comes to the arts. Like you have to be talented or you have to have skills.
Mm.
And if you don't know how to draw really well, there's no point in doing it because what's the point? Um, which I think are the kinds of like anxieties that plague our
Mm.
adolescents when we're growing up, feeling that we need to be great to
Mm.
be, validated or valid in any way. So
So that's very nice, and the fact that you're encouraging people who haven't been told that they're, got a talent in art. Is that,
exactly.
yeah? What sort of inspires you, or what is your art like?
I guess what I've done for most of my artistic career, if that's what I can
Yes.
call it,
Yeah.
has been painting,
Mm-hmm.
and using acrylic paints, working with canvas and such.
Mm.
But I do like to play around and jump from place to place. I've done some mixed media work. I love pastels a lot.
Mm.
Um, I've also done some sculptures and
Mm.
installations, a
Oh wow.
performance, video work here or there. Um, Last year, for the whole year, I was working in like textile art. So I was doing embroidery, dyeing fabrics, that sort of thing.
Oh yes, I saw some of the pictures of your fabrics there. Those are lovely. Yeah, they seem to have some sort of African, yeah, tie dyes. It reminds me a little bit of West African prints.
Yeah. So I was researching indigo
Mm-hmm.
and looking at the material itself, the substance of the plant, and how it's kind of cultured to produce the pigment that we use in
Ah,
dyeing,
uh-huh.
and then looking at like the aesthetic values in different cultures, the patterns that are created,
Mm.
kind of associations with what those mean or their significance, the kind of techniques that are used to create different patterns and different motifs. And that was kind of what I was reading through and trying to find out more about. The whole of 2022, I was working with fabric and kind of soft materials and embroidery, and that was really great. And I mean, there are many different names for many different iterations of indigo throughout the west of Africa and also in the north as well. And I mean, it's also something that's kind of, from my understanding, was established in different parts of the world at different times. I mean, in East Asia, South Asia, South America as well, there are different kind of cultures around indigo, which have their own particular sensibilities. But yeah, Cameroon does have one, and it's called Ndo. But when I was there at 18, it was more the family. The village where we stayed, where my grandparents had built a home in Limbe, which is kind of towards the sea in the southwest. And I mean, I felt like it was pretty quiet, but I think that was the first time that I went out, like, to see the nightlife and engage with people and just, catch a vibe of what the feeling was in the space. And I remember taking walks with my brother to certain places that I hadn't been before and kind of just learning how to feel the energy in that area, because it's a very different like environment and culture to what I experienced in the city in Johannesburg. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. That's very interesting. Things I take from you is that you are quite introverted and you like to be in your own space. And your art is something that actually fits in well with that. Is that?
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, I listened to the conversation that you had with Anaisa, kind of in preparation, not really preparation, but just getting a sense of the conversations, and found that to be a really inspiring talk, and listening to her story and I guess her position on her work and the projects that she's done, especially what she was saying about community and kind of community engagement, the kind of multi-pronged approach to the kind of work she's doing in film and video.
Yes.
As opposed to, I guess, what is my experience of art, where it's very, very introspective. And I'm also very, in many cases, I can be prolific in making, but it's not always something that I want to share with people. There's not always something that I want people to see. And often the benefit of my art for myself is in being alone and kind of making these repetitive marks or spending hours sewing something. There's something very meditative about that. And the end product never really feels like what should be valued about the work that I'm trying to do. But I guess that's what people can interact with. So it's strange for me that it's kind of this outward expression of what I'm experiencing inside, but then the value that I take from it is very much has to do with the reflection of creating something that comes from inside of you. Or if I see that someone is stuck, because I know what it feels like to be stuck when you're trying to create something, I can give them a nudge or a suggestion. But I think it's also why I've asked other people to be involved, because I also want it to be multi-pronged. I know how I am, that I'm very sort of reclusive and introspective. So it would be really great to have other people in the space that can help me kind of create this very comfortable atmosphere for people to communicate in, to have conversations, to work. Yeah. As you said, South Africa has a lot of inequality. And especially in Johannesburg, it's a very weird situation where you have extreme poverty, 2 minutes away from extreme wealth.
Yes, I know. And this community center is in Orange Grove, is it? Is it in? It's sort of in the middle of what?
It's on the border of Orange Grove and Norwood. So it's like
Okay.
in the center of a whole bunch of
Yeah.
suburbs.
Yeah. So I
So
have an interesting catchment.
yeah.
Are you actually going to forget completely the maths, or it sounds at the moment that you're dedicating time to the arts rather than the teaching?
The the inspiration for teaching actually came from mathematics, and that was what drew me to maths. Is that I felt like I could help a lot of people who are struggling, and
Mm.
even if I couldn't turn you into an A student in
Mm.
maths. It could help you do better and maybe get closer to what you're trying to achieve. And that kind of feeling of being able to help somebody and
Mm.
contribute to their journey and their ambitions was really great.
Oh, I should have
So
had
that,
you around when I was struggling with my maths. I was terrible at it.
right.
So, okay, so you're helping children with maths, are you as well? Is that when you were studying maths in the first year?
Yeah. So the reason I chose to study maths is because I wanted
Mm.
to teach maths after
Ah,
having been a teacher for about a year. I was
I
working with
see.
kids. And then I kind of had to go through the degree myself.
Yeah, because you could combine somehow the two. I mean, you still, in some very unique way, Emeka, the maths and arts teacher.
I think that would be really awesome. I think I would be very proud of myself if I
Mm.
managed to achieve that. I
Yeah.
don't know what school would employ a math slash art teacher in their
Of course.
department, in their faculty, but I think
Mm.
it's kind of the goal. If I
Mm.
manage to pull that off, I'll be very happy. I'll
Mm.
be very happy with myself. Yeah.
You seem like you get a lot of satisfaction from, sort of sharing your skills with other
Mm.
people, and that's and is it and children in particular, when you say even with the maths, I assume you were teaching school children the maths, were you, or were you other sort of your
Mm.
peers?
No, it was particularly school children.
Mm.
So most cases I was working from like grade 5 to matric,
Yeah.
grade 5, grade 12. So
Mm.
between like 12 and 18 years old.
That's great, and I'm sure you've made a big difference to, the people, and also your sort of gentle manner and the way that, yeah, I can imagine you are very patient. Yeah, which is. What would you say to people in terms of how art can help people, sort of express themselves, or what would?
Well, I guess especially because of how I produce art, the first thing I would say is that it's very personal, and the kind of art that you make and what your art does for you is very much dependent on yourself. Some people like to work in collaborations, like to work in kind of communal projects. Other people are very isolated in their practice, like myself.
Mm.
Um, but I think what's really great about the art is that you can decide
Mm.
what it is that it does for you. In my case, it's always been, I think everything goes very quiet when I'm making work.
Mm. Mm.
Even if I'm playing really loud music or whatever's going on externally, when I'm painting or when I'm sewing, my body feels still. My mind feels very calm and very quiet. And sometimes the way that I'm thinking begins to change while I'm
Mm.
practicing. And not even to say that it's like a trance, but it's almost like things that I've maybe tried to bury very
Mm.
subconsciously, or just getting carried away in, I don't know, instant gratification and TV and whatnot. When I'm working, a lot of the stuff starts to bubble to the surface. And
Mm.
I think it's a difficult, sometimes a very difficult feeling to come to terms with, but it can be very rewarding when you allow yourself to feel those feelings. And I think that's what's been really important for
Mm.
me about art. I
Mm.
could be working on something that's supposed to be incredibly uplifting,
Mm.
and somehow the acknowledgement of a sadness inside of myself is very uplifting. because there's this connection, there's this alignment with what's really happening. And those can be very, like, they relieve a lot of the stress.
Yes,
It's like weight
yes.
coming off the shoulders. So I think, yeah, it's definitely possible, and I think there's value in trying to depict what you're feeling, but I don't think you have to do that to have very powerful feelings while you're working.
Okay, that's a very good point. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, how, in terms of motivating people, do you always feel very motivated to? Because one of the things with art is sometimes it can be quite challenging to motivate yourself. Once you get into it, you feel the benefits, but actually sometimes starting something can be very daunting. I mean, what sort of techniques do you use?
I think, so the one thing I can say is working on multiple projects. Sometimes it can be a bit overwhelming, when you stretch yourself too thin, especially if you're working on deadlines. Then
Yes.
working on multiple projects is not the best idea. But if it's something that you're doing for yourself, or if you're independent, I think having multiple projects running, multiple images that have different meanings or feelings to them, so that you can kind of tap into whatever is appropriate for the moment. But I think also, when it comes to creating work for me, there are often moments where I get stuck. And as much as you can throw a tantrum at the work that you're doing, you're not going to make any progress right now. So in that instance, to kind of stay productive, the best thing to do is just to create in a different space, in a different mindset, towards a different outcome, and return to what you were working on when it feels appropriate. But I think I'm also not I'm not an everyday paint, 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 paint person.
No.
Uh, I've never been that way about anything really in my life. I think I work not really in bursts, but there's a flow that I can tap into, which is very whimsical.
Yeah.
Very much work with the wind and the
Yes.
direction you take me in. Of
Yeah.
course, in some instances, you have to push yourself because there's expectations of you,
Yes.
or responsibilities you have to own up to. But in most cases, I try to reduce as much of the stress and protocol around my work.
Right. That makes sense. And I'm sure it actually pays off, well, because you are more creative when you can go with the flow and, yeah, not go with stress and deadlines and, yeah, sort of that just dampens all creativity often, and it's so daunting. But it's really, really nice to have you on the podcast. Is there anything else you would like to share with us, or any last words of wisdom for people that haven't really got into art and thinking about it?
You don't have to be an artist to make art. You don't have to be good at art to be an artist either. Um, the whole point, I think, of the space is to challenge things. And if you try to be honest and you try to be intentional, I think good things are going to come of it. Maybe some things that you won't be able to see for yourself, but other people will be able to recognize and bring your attention to, which I think is often the case, especially in my work. So, yeah, it can be daunting to put energy into something that doesn't feel like it's going to amount to anything. But I think to take pride in the process and just use it intentionally and honestly as a way to kind of speak to yourself and just feel what you're feeling. Doesn't have to be good, doesn't have to be pretty. It's always going to be exactly what it ends up being, whether you like it or not. So there's no point in really fussing over that.
That's very well put. Yeah, you sort of already inspired me. Thanks a lot, Emeka. No, I mean, it's really fascinating, and you're so thoughtful in how you express everything, and yeah, very inspiring.
Thank you.
And I'm really looking forward to, hearing more about the workshop when it gets set up. Must get back to me, keep me updated.
I definitely will let you know. I'll send photos of our first run through of our pilot, most definitely.
Great, that'd be wonderful.
To have this conversation with you, knowing the caliber of people that you are having these engagements with, it's a real privilege, and I was excited.
Oh no, thank you so much. I was very excited to have you on the podcast. So yeah, I really do appreciate you coming on. Thanks very much, Emeka. You were great. Thank you.